It's also fresh, the water. The water is also fresh. Like I live here like before.
Oh, okay. Okay.
What did I just do here? Wait, the same thing happened with me like the other day. It's like windows. Wait, like here is that. Oh, yeah. Then like that. Okay, that's what I was trying to do, but happened like with Miss Pam, and she was like, "Okay, they don't look beautiful today." I was like, "I didn't anything."
Good morning. It's so nice. What's the youngest today?
Nothing, just I was just like late to work, but I decided that I missed you.
Okay. You're very welcome. Okay. We shall begin. I'm going to continue reading from the Hebrew, but if you want to follow me in the English Mimer, you can do that. So he asked a few questions about the language that the Gemara uses regarding the fact that the table of a person is like the Mizbeach. And he asked, why does it say the table? It should have said the meal, or it should have said the eating, because actually that's the main thing we're talking about. That eating food at a table is like Mizbeach consuming the meat on the Mizbeach. So why are we emphasizing the word the table? And he says that certainly when Chazal choose this precise wording, because it's alluding to something deeper. In other words, this is a general principle about everything in Torah. This is like, by the way, he's giving us a general approach to Torah in general. That in the Torah, there's a neshama and a guf. There's a body and there's a soul. And when you read something in Torah, whether it's a halacha, you see the body of it on the surface. The soul, just like with the humans, you look at a person and you see the body, the eyes, nose, mouth. And in that sense, you don't see so many details. This is just what a person looks like. Yes, every person looks different than another person. If you have 1,000 people in one room, they all look different. But you don't really know the differences. The differences are inside. So imagine you had 1,000 people in a room. And there are men there, there are women there. So there's general differences amongst men and women. Then there are differences amongst the men. Each one looks a little bit different. One is taller, one is shorter. The facial, face looks different. But the real difference is inside. Everybody has a different life experience, comes from a different background, went through so many different things. You can't even count them because every day in your life is another experience. So therefore, the real difference between people is inside. So too, when you talk about something in Torah, there are many mitzvahs, many halachas. One is a little bit different than the other, but the real difference is deeper things that are going on that you don't see on the surface. So when our sages chose a certain language to explain something, the fact that they chose a precise term, that alludes to the deeper part, which is not so obvious. But when you think about it, you say, how come they use this word, not that word? How come they use this expression, not that expression? It would have made more sense. It leads us to realize there's something more here, and that allows us to look deeper into the soul of the halacha. It's like we just had Purim. The body of the halacha is to have a meal on Purim, to drink wine on Purim, to be besimcha on Purim, to read the Megillah on Purim. So let's take a halacha like that. There's a mitzvah to read the Megillah on Purim, to read the story. That's the body of the halacha. The neshama of the halacha is that this is Amalek, and Amalek is a certain klippa, and all the things we learned about in class about the avodah of a person eliminating, or at least in a personal level, eliminating the personal coldness, doubt, arrogance, all the things that Amalek stands for. And that's the deeper reason behind it. And that explains a lot of the small details, which on the surface we don't get. So here too, he's asking these questions about the wording, because that's the key. And those little details, that gives you, that reveals to you that there's so much more depth here. So now we're going to go to Beis, the second chapter. Lifnei achila, before we eat, tzarich lirchatz es hayadayim, we're supposed to wash our hands. Mashenikra, and it's called the tilas yadayim. And that's how we make the bracha. The tilas yadayim, when it comes to washing our hands, yeshnei efanim. There's two ways to what. Where am I? Page 218, base. There's two ways to wash the hands. One way is the way we wash our hands when we wake up in the morning, which we call negovasar. And that's kasher komim mehashina, as we wake up from sleep. So we have to wash our hands. There's another way of washing hands, and that's the tilas yadayim l'suda, the way we wash our hands before eating bread. Generally speaking, washing the hands is the same by both. Gam kashrus hamayim. Also, what is it? The laws that pertain to the water. It has to be water that's nikim, that's clean water. It has to be water that you didn't use the water for something to do work with it. So when you learn Shulchan Aruch, there's a list of halachas of which water is qualified to use for the Netilas Yadayim. And those halachas, it makes a difference whether you're washing your hands for waking up in the morning or you're washing your hands for your meal. Those halachas which qualify the water or disqualify the water are the same. Also, the bracha that we make, the text of the bracha is also the same. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu al netilas yadayim. Now, of course, you might be thinking that when we wake up in the morning, we don't make the bracha, we just wash near our bed. But we do make the bracha a little bit later. It's the same thing. It's really the washing, except we just wash it once, so we shouldn't be walking without negavasa. But then the washing with the bracha comes later when we say the morning brachas. And we start off with Baruch atah Hashem. After Maidani, the first bracha we make is Asher kitshanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu al netilas yadayim. And then we go on with the other brachas. So the bracha is the same. Gam oifen shebei hamayim tzrichim lahakif es hayadayim. Also, the manner with which the water has to be poured onto the hands is also the same. Shaveh b'shnei hapanim shel netilas yadayim. You're supposed to pour the water up until the wrist, and how you're supposed to pour it, those details are the same. B'chol zois, nevertheless, with notwithstanding the fact that in so many ways they're similar, yesh chilukim, there still are differences by netilas yadayim shachris, how we wash our hands when we wake up from our sleep, and netilas yadayim nesuda, how we wash our hands before we eat. The chiluk echad, one of the differences that stand out, how we pour the water on our hands is the following. The way we pour the water on our hands when we wake up in the morning, when we get up from our sleep, should be we alternate. right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, which means that we're washing it 3 times on each hand, but we alternate. First, you take the keli, which is the vessel that you're using, in your right hand, and that's where you fill up the water. Then mabirim the smallest, then you pass it on to the left hand. The right hand gives it to the left hand. The sheikhem samayim al yad hayimonis. So with your left hand, you first start pouring the water on the right hand, and after that you pour on the left hand, and then you go back and forth 3 times. That's when you wake up from your sleep. So here, washing before eating is also similar, that it's 3 times on each hand. But the way it is different. You don't alternate. You wash it 3 times consecutively. 1, 2, 3 on one hand, and then 1, 2, 3 on the other hand. Again, you take the vessel in the right hand, just like in the morning. Mavirim the smallest, you give it over to the left hand. That's also just like in the morning. The nightlands yad hayamanis, and with the left hand, you wash the right hand. But this time, shalish pamim l'tzufis, 3 consecutive times. And then you wash the left hand 3 consecutive times. So he's pointing out how in so many details they're similar, and yet there's a difference. And then while the hands are still wet, you're supposed to, with the wet hands, to put one hand on the other, wipe one hand with the other hand. Then you pick up your both hands. With the varach has a bracha, you make the bracha on Untitled Chapter. Maybe it doesn't mention it here, but in the morning, when we wash for the morning, we don't have the hands touch each other. On the contrary, we make sure that they don't touch each other until they're dry. When you wash for a meal, you take them while they're wet and you wipe one hand with the other, and then you lift them. So we need to understand. Again, we're going into the neshama of it. What's the spiritual deeper meaning behind washing the hands? Hein b'boker, in both cases. In the morning, when a person wakes up, and in general, you have to wash your hands even by day. If a person goes to sleep by day and you wake up, you also have to wash your hands. The only difference between the morning and the daytime is when you go to sleep at night and you wake up in the morning, we know not to walk without negavasa. When you go to sleep by day and you wake up, you don't have to wash negavasa near the bed. Then you can go to the sink. The idea of not walking dalad amas without washing only applies to waking up from sleeping at night. But otherwise, you wash your hands when you wake up in the morning, or you wash your hands when you wake up from your sleep during the day, or when you walk out of a place which is not a clean place, like walking out of the bathroom, or washing before eating. What is this in? Why all these situations there's a mitzvah to wash your hands? In general, why do we have to wash our hands? And so the question is, first of all, why in general there's such thing as washing hands? And what is the difference between this Untitled Shachris and Untitled the Suda? And we know in the Torah it talks about purification from different kinds of impurities. But that's different. The whole person immerses himself in a body of water, and the whole body is covered with the water, and that purifies him. Here it's a little bit different. Here, it's not the whole body, only the hands, and only until the wrist. What is that all about? Why in these situations is this inyan of washing the hands? And the second question is, why the differences? Being that we wash the hands, and in so many ways they're similar, that means the general idea is the same. So why is there a difference between one and the other? What is the difference between Untitled Yadayim Shachris, washing our hands in the morning when we get up, Untitled Yadayim the Suda? That the washing the hands for the Suda is consecutive, not alternating, But in both cases, in both cases, we have to take the keli, which is the quart, the vessel, in our right hand, and we also have to wash the right hand first, and only then give it over to the left hand. What is that about? Another question. Why do we call it netilas yadayim? And that's what the bracha is. What's wrong? What would be a better way of saying it? The better way of saying would be rechitzas yadayim, which in Hebrew means washing the hands, or ishtipas yadayim, or rinsing the hands. Shem bituyim hayesim asimim. These are expressions that are much more suitable, the tir ha'pu'ula, to describe what we're doing, which is washing our hands, cleaning our hands in the morning. It's much more suitable than saying netilas yadayim. Why? Because netilas yadayim means to take the hands. Shemashmoi eine rak nikuy rechitza yadayim. It doesn't really imply that you're washing the hands or cleaning the hands. As we'll soon see, it has a different meaning. So in general, I just want to say, you always find the Maimarim that they go into the little details of the wording and the expressions, because the deeper secret neshama meaning of everything really comes out in those little details. Because on the surface, the general way it's expressed, you just see it in a general way. When you want to get to know more depth to it, you look at the little details, and those little details, they sort of reveal to us that there's something deeper here and what it is. What's wrong with the word netilas yadayim? Hamila netila, the word netila, mashmal the kicha. In Hebrew, it means to take, or it could also be interpreted as harama, to lift. So basically, we're taking the cup with water, washing our hands. So we say taking, or lifting, because you have to lift it. But there's a word natla in Aramaic, and it's another third interpretation. Natla means kli hamayim, the actual vessel which you use to wash the hands. Like we use the word kvart, which is a Yiddish word for the vessel we use to wash our hands. Natla is an Aramaic word which defines the vessel that's used to wash our hands. So we have three interpretations for the word netila. One is lekicha, to take. One is harama, to lift. And one is, it's the vessel that you use. Adai, in all three of these interpretations, einam, mitarim, esapula, anachayne, bapshuta. They don't describe properly and accurately and in a simple way what you're doing, which is washing or rinsing. Shehi masimim, these words are so much more suitable and it's understood in a simple way. That's what we're doing, washing our hands. So why say lifting? Because when you wash, you lift your hand. That's like going to something on the side. Are you using the term natla because you're using a cup to wash it? Why talk about the cup? Talk about the actual act. You're washing your hands. That should be the words of the bracha. So and we can understand again who gave us these words, by the way. So we know that the brachas, all the brachas we make, Shahaka, Bar Piyadoma, the bracha al netilas yadayim, all these brachas come from Anshe Knesset Agdolah. They're the ones who wrote the Siddur, Shmon Esrei, and who were Anshe Knesset Agdolah? They were very big tzaddikim and neviim. They lived at the end of the end of the Golus of Babylon, and the beginning of the first Beis Hamikdash. And just to get some idea of the timing, one of the 120 sages that belonged to this group was Mordechai, from the story of Purim. So imagine Mordechai, Ezra. Ezra was the one who led the Jews out of Golus. The Gemara says that really he was so great that he was worthy for Hashem to give the Torah through him, just like through Moshe. So you talk about the greatest tzaddikim and neviim. There's no doubt that they chose the wording precisely. And not only that, especially when you look at the words and it doesn't even fit, certainly there's something very deep here, otherwise they would have chosen the word which is more suitable.
sorry.
Yeah.
When they write it between the first and the second Beit Hamikdash?
When did Mordechai live? He lived in the time of Purim, right? When was Purim? Purim was at the end of the 70 years of Golot Bavel and the beginning of the building of the second Beit Hamikdash. So that time period, those sages are called Anshe Knesset Agdola. They were the greatest tzaddikim of that generation. And there were 120 tzaddikim.
In the second Beit Hamikdash, already they had everything organized, no? Sidu.
They had the brachas already, yeah. The beginning of the second Beit Hamikdash, that's when they had Shmon Esrei, the brachas. There are details of the siddur that over the years were added a piece here, a piece there, and things like that. But the general structure of davening was already found then, yeah. From the fact that they chose to define and describe the bracha that was supposed to be made for washing the hands or rinsing the hand, and they used the nusach of the text and the tilas yadayim behechrach. This must mean sha'av ki akavon nehila rechitza ishtifa. Even though the purpose here is to wash or to rinse the hands, the chol zeis habracha hu rak on the tilas yadayim. Nevertheless, the bracha is for taking, but not for washing or rinsing. This must teach us that the intention here is that rinsing the hands and even washing the hands, it's not enough. The main thing you need here is that the washing and the rinsing should be in a way which should be described as natila. What's natila? The word natila, that is what defines the essence of what the purpose is. There's two ways how we could wash and rinse our hands. Yes, the purpose is to rinse the hand. The purpose is to wash the hands. But the way it should be done is through natila, and that's why that's the word for the bracha. And what's natila? It means two things. One is that you have to take. We'll soon see what that means. And the second way to wash the hands is b'derech harama. You have to lift. So the taking part and the lifting part, and then there's a third one. Has to be with a vessel that's called natla. Shekli hamayim, and there's a lot of halachas about the vessel, by the way. You can't just use anything. The vessel that you're using to wash your hands also has halachas. What's qualified and what's disqualified? Kli hamayim tzarich is shalim. First of all, the vessel has to be complete. If it's a broken vessel, it's not qualified. V'shiyilei teicha makabel has to be a vessel that has something inside to receive. Like you couldn't use, let's say, a flat board, put water on it, and use it to wash your hands. Has to be a keli. Has an inside, and the water goes inside. And the water has to be poured. The kayach gavra, a person, another has to be the hand of a human being that pours the water. But let's say water is just pouring down naturally from a mountain, and you put your hand under it. You can be yesa. Has to be pouring it with the kayach of a person. Has to be a human being that's making the water pour. Kayach shel bardas. So that means that we see from this, it's not just washing and rinsing, it has to be washed and rinsed in a specific manner. And only if it's done in a specific manner, then it's kosher. What is that manner? What are these details and why are they so necessary? Kitzer. Now we'll do the summary of this part. The summary. The summary is Mavar Shnei Fanim Metilas Yadayim. In this part of the Maimon, he explains there are two ways how to wash the hands. One is Babaikar in the morning when you wake up from your sleep, and the second one is Bnei Asuda before a meal. Achiluk Ikri, the primary difference is Ba'ifan Arachitza, how you wash, because almost in everything else they're almost similar. And the difference is Babaikar in the morning is B'Serugin, you alternate one hand and then the other hand. Well, the Suda, when it comes to eating a meal, Kisidran, you wash the 3 times on the hand consecutive 3 times. The Natila Yeshleisha Perushim, the word Natila, he explains in the Maimer, has 3 definitions. One is Lakachas, to take. One is Lagbia, to lift. And the third one is Kli Hamayim. It means the actual vessel that you're using. Shayel, the question in the Maimer is, Ma Kavana B'nusach HaBracha, what is this hidden intention that they chose, that the text of the bracha, which definitely expresses the essence of this act, is Netilas Yadayim. Why isn't it Shtifas Yadayim, which is rinsing the hands, or Rechitzas Yadayim, washing the hands? The second question is Ma'uch Shivas HaKli. What is this about the keli, the vessel? The main thing is the water. Why is it so important? It has to be a vessel. Shalav li shalim ubal kibelis. It has to be complete. If it's chipped, it's not kosher. And if there's no inside, it's not kosher. As long as there's water and it's being poured out of the cup, what's the big deal? What the vessel looks like. And the third question is Ma'u nachut gavr shabardas. Why does it have to be a human being who has intelligence, that he has to pour the water? And what's wrong if you put the water under, water is gushing down a mountain, gushing down some sort of a waterfall, and you put your hands under it. It's the same water, it does the same rinsing, it does the same cleaning. Why does it have to be a vessel? And even it's a vessel, the vessel is complete, and the vessel has an inside, but if it's not being poured with a human being, it's still not good.
Have to be interesting because it's so long.
It's actually a short nightmare.
No, but then this.
Yeah. Okay, Gimel. Hilchas and Netilas Yadayim, the laws that pertain to Netilas Yadayim, in Arucha Umsuderes Begalish B'Torah. In the revealed part of the Torah, there's so many halachas in Netilas Yadayim, which means if you open the Shulchan Aruch, there's an entire section with pages and pages of Netilas Yadayim. In fact, even in the Siddur, if you have the Siddur that's the full Siddur with everything in it, you'll see that there's another part which is not in the Shulchan Aruch, but in the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe put another section called Hilchas Netilas Yadayim. Let me just see if I can show you what it is. And these Siddur, the big ones, you go to page no, I think this has it. I think this, yeah, here it is. There's one section here which is laws of brachas, and there's another section here which is laws of Netilas Yadayim. So that's on page 411. Halach is about washing the hands, and in Shulchan Aruch it's more pages about washing the hands. So that's called the revealed part of Torah, which talks about the practical, technical details. Like you said before, there's so many details. What kind of vessel is good or not good? What kind of water is good or not good? What kind of washing is good or not good? What if it's not a person, but if it's an ape that washes your hands? Is it good enough or not? So there are halachas. That's in the nigla, the reveal. Chola and Yonim, every detail of these halachas, it's really a reflection of Avodah b'nefesh ha'adam, of the Avodah of a person. Shema pnimiyus v'neshama shel halacha b'gala sheb'Torah. That is a reflection. There's something deeper, which is reflected in the practical, technical detail, which means the fact that there's all these halachas are really a reflection of the fact that there's a deeper thing going on in the neshama, just like in a person. Every movement you make, every nuance is really an expression of something in your neshama. If a person is speaking loud or speaking low, if they smile or they're crying, every expression on a person's face, every movement and every nuance is really an expression of what you're feeling and experiencing inside. In fact, there are people that That's what they do for a living. And they talk to you for 2 minutes, or they look at your face and they'll tell you what you're going through. Because whatever is in there comes out on the outside. So all the things that are going on in the neshama express itself in the body of Torah, which is the halacha. So halacha's psuk is saying there is a halacha which is adam muad la'olam. A man, it means a human being, doesn't mean a man or a woman, a human being, muad la'olam. Bein b'shegi, bein b'mezid, bein bein yoshav, yadayim, as study is saying. What does that mean? First of all, let me just talk about the halacha. What does it mean in the halacha? The halacha is that when an animal does damage, you might remember this from if you learned the Parsha Mishpatim, which is a little bit complicated, but that's where these halachas are found. There's a difference between a tam and a muad. Tam means an animal that never attacked anyone yet. Didn't attack a person, didn't attack another animal, the first time that it happened. So the owner has to pay the damage, but only half, because it's considered something unusual. What if it does it a second time? Still have to pay half. But if the animal does it 3 times, it's called a muad. Means obviously it has a nature to attack, a nature to gore other animals or people. And then you have a greater responsibility. And if it happens, you're responsible, it's your negligence. You should have seen that it shouldn't happen. So these are the 2 terms used, tam and muad, which means when it's a tam, you're not really so responsible yet, and therefore you pay half the damage. When it's a muad, it means this is the norm for this animal because it did it 3 times, and now you're more responsible. A human being is always a muad. You don't say when a person attacks somebody 1 time, okay, you don't have to pay so much because it's unusual. For a person, it shouldn't even happen 1 time because a person has intelligence. So these are the words. A person is always responsible, whether he does something intentionally or he does it unintentionally, whether he does something while he's awake or if he does something while he's sleeping. I know you're thinking, why should I be responsible if I do something when I'm sleeping? So the Gemara says, it doesn't mean something, first of all, when it says unintentionally, you can also ask, why am I responsible if it's unintentional? There's the difference between unintentional and accidental. An accident, you're not responsible, but unintentional, you are responsible. For example, like one of the examples that are given is imagine you throw something out the window. You're trying to fix your air conditioner and you see that, it's junk, it's not going to go anywhere. Why schlep it out and schlep it downstairs? They just push it out the window. If chas v'shalom, you hurt someone who was standing down there, or you break something when it fell, you're responsible. But I didn't realize, well, being that you're a human being and something gave you, the Eibishter gave you something, you put it into your head, it's called brains. You should look out the window before you throw it and check. So even though technically it was not intentional, but you're responsible because it's negligence. You should have looked. If it's something which is totally, completely beyond your control, you couldn't have expected this to happen, that's called an accident, then you're not responsible. That's number 1. And the same with sleeping. Of course, when you're sleeping, you can't be held responsible when you're sleeping, but what if you go lay down at a bed, and next to the bed, somebody put some glass jars next to the bed. And now, middle of your sleep, you're tossing and you're turning and you kick the jars and you break it. Are you responsible or not? Yes, you're responsible. If you went to sleep and there was nothing there, and then some chacham came in the middle of the night and put jars next to your bed and you broke it, then you're not responsible because they shouldn't have put it there. But if you went to sleep while it was there, again, when you did it, you were sleeping. But you should have calculated before you went to sleep that this could happen, and you shouldn't have either moved them away or not gone to sleep. So that's what it means. A person, a man, a human being has intelligence, and they have to be responsible, and therefore they are liable, whether it's done intentional, unintentional, during their sleep or during when they're awake. And at night, when a person sleeps, the hands are always moving around. And that's one of the reasons why we have to wash our hands, because the hands are always moving and they're touching different parts of the body. And when a person's sleeping, you're not in control. It just as if it has a life of its own. Adam mud la'olam. Now he goes to explain it more. Hadarga Adam, the tafke the Adam who, a person who is an Adam, and specifically the level of Adam, which means there are different names that are used to describe a person, a man, a human being. Sometimes Adam, sometimes Ish, sometimes the word that's used is Gever, sometimes the word that's used is Elish. These are 4 different terms. But the word Adam is the highest sort of title for a human being. So being that you're an Adam, the tafke the Adam, it's your responsibility. You're always responsible for your actions. It makes no difference in whether you did it intentionally or unintentional, whether you did it when you're awake or you're not awake. You're a human being, and you could use your seichel to calculate things, and therefore you're responsible for your actions. So basically, that means that we have to be careful that our actions should be positive and constructive and doing good things, not chas v'shalom doing something which is destructive. And especially with the hands, Yudayim Askoni is saying, the hands, Askonius means the hands sort of do things on their own. Hakavana, that means the nature of the hands is Shem Askonius Apilus, I'm doing things with my hands. And that's boy, so Yudayim, and the hands have fingers. And the fingers, have tzipornaim, have nails. The tachas atzipornaim is kabetz lichloch, and the nails, under the nails, it's a place that gathers dirt. That's physically. Azar hakodeshim, and the Zohar says v'tufra achidon, which means klipus yesh achiza b'tzipornaim. Just like physically, the nails is a place that accumulates dirt. They have to always clean it. In fact, one of the halachas before you wash for bread is to check that there's no dirt under the nails. And in general, when a person immerses himself in a mikveh, you check to say that the nails are clean. Why? So just like physically, the nails accumulates dirt. The klipus yesh achiza b'tzipornaim. Klipus, which means the klipus that can connect to a person, they can connect more than anything else to the nails of the person. And that's the deeper meaning of Natilus Yadayim. Rechitzas Yadayim, washing the hands, Shalaklipas Lotia Chiza B'tzipanayim, that the klipus that could have a connection to me by sort of holding on to my nails. When the Zohar says they hold on to the nails, it's as if to say that how can they hold on to the person? They can't grab hold of his foot, and they can't grab hold of his hand, and they can't grab hold of his head. The one part of the body that the klipus could get hold of are the nails. Why the nails? Because the nails are sharp, and the nails are something which could scratch and could do damage. So it's a part of the body. First of all, we know from Tanya that in general there are 2 parts of the body that have the least chayas in it, and one of them is the nails. In other words, the nails have life in it, otherwise they wouldn't grow. So how could it be it has life in it, and yet when you cut it with a scissor, it doesn't hurt? That must mean that the chayas in the nails is so limited and so concealed, it's as if it doesn't exist. So generally speaking, nails have the least chayas. But the difference between nails and hair is not something that does damage. Nails are something that do damage. With nails, you can scratch someone, you can hurt someone. So therefore, the klipus, being that they're negative energy, where in the body can they grab hold of something? It's the nails. And when you wash your hands, in fact, that's what the word negovasa means in Yiddish. You know what negel means? Nails, that's what it means, nails. You're really washing your hands to get the klipus away from your nails. It says in Shulchan Aruch, when a person wakes up in the morning, at night when a person is sleeping because the neshama is hidden, So there's a certain impurity on the body. But as soon as you wake up, the impurity goes away. But even though it goes away, it remains on this part of the hand, and mainly by the nails. And that's why we wash our hands. So that's the meaning of washing the hands. We're basically washing away klipa. It's not the washing, a physical washing. I could wash my hands with soap and water, and I can use all the soap in the world. Has nothing to do with klipas. Yeah. What? That's something else. No, we don't even wash this part. It's this part of the hand, the tip of the fingers. So because the chayas of the neshama in the nails is so mitzumtzum, which means it's so limited, it's so contracted. Like I said, it's as if it's not there. Because, for example, in the body, you can't compare the life force in the head where there's a brain or the heart where there's emotion. You can't compare that to the foot. And you can't compare it to the toes. You can't compare it to the heels. Like the heels is the most insensitive part of the body. That's why we could walk on our heels, because we don't feel what's there. With the feet, you can walk on sand, you can walk on different things. It's a very tough, rough part of the body, not sensitive. But nevertheless, you still feel it and you still feel pain. You can't take a knife and cut it and not expect to feel it, because there's very little chayas, but there's still chayas. So how could it be that the nails have chayas, and the proof is because it's growing, but at the same time, you can take a scissor, cut it, feel nothing. So it means that it's in a very extreme degree of concealment of chayas. It's so extreme, it's as if it doesn't exist. And because it's so extreme, that's where klipas can hang on to things when the chayas is hidden. Just like when the person sleeps, because there's no neshama, there's impurity that comes down, because impurity can be in a place where there's life and godliness. So too in the body, by the nails, because it's the least chayas, that's where klipas can hold on to. So both on a spiritual level and also physically, the nails can do damage. So this is also the deeper reason why under the nails there could be dirt. And if there's dirt there, that gives chayas to the klipa, again, because it's not clean. And then, so if I wash my hands and the nails are not clean, then the netilas yadayim doesn't help. So therefore, you have to clean under the nails and wash with the water in this specific spiritual order, and that washes away the klipa. So naturally, we'll learn a little bit later why, but being that we're talking about a spiritual kind of cleanliness, has to be done in a certain spiritual order. It's not enough to wash. Like the Rambam writes about mikveh, that a mikveh purifies a man or purifies a woman, but the Rambam says that if a woman, for example, didn't go to the mikveh, even if she washed herself with all the waters in the world, no matter all the oceans and all the lakes and everything in the world would be used, but not in the way halachically a mikveh is supposed to be used, it doesn't make the person pure, because it's a spiritual purification. It's not the water physically. So here too, it's a spiritual purification. So there are a lot of details in terms of how the water should be, how it should be poured, what's the order, and then it could wash away the klipa that's by the nails. To be continued. Yeah.
I'm making a gift for my friends L'chaim of like a scrapbook with different pieces of marriage advice in it. Can I get a piece of marriage advice from you?
Oh, wow. It's a tough one. Always listen to your husband. Take something from Pirkei Avos. What does it say?